Very good. Next is item 30. We're going to take this. I know there are a number of people here on the homeless issue, so we'll discuss this. Following this, I'm going to jump to the public hearing because I know there's some people here for that too. So, but first, we're going to take this item number 30, which is receive and discuss information on the various funds and methods used by the city and the County of Orange to address homelessness, as well as any other matters that may involve the assessment of and efforts to address homelessness in the city, and provide staff with the direction on such matters. Mr. City Manager, staff report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you. At the request of Councilmember Moreno, we have returned at every second meeting to provide an update on issues as it relates to homelessness, and then specifically tonight, the request to invite a representative from the County of Orange. I will turn it over to Assistant City Manager Christine Ridge, who will introduce our guests as well as the item itself. Christine?
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Tonight for the standing homeless item, as Paul mentioned, we're focusing on the funding sources and the processes. And I am joined here by Julia Bidwell, who is the Director of the County of Orange Housing and Community Development Homeless Prevention Department. And she's going to speak on the process that is used to distribute federal funds in the greater region. And then also you will hear from Grace Stepter, our Housing Authority Manager, on...
Okay. Assistant City Manager, back to you.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Julia Bidwell from the County of Orange.
Good evening. Sorry about that. I'm happy to be here to present on the Continuum of Care program, a federal program. I'm going to go through some of the background, the definition, and then the funding that comes into the county region-wide to address homelessness. First, a definition of the Continuum of Care. Continuum of Care is a regional or local planning body that coordinates housing and services, funding for homeless families and individuals. The Department of Housing and Urban Development identifies 4 necessary parts of a continuum: outreach, intake, and assessment, emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing. The purpose of a Continuum of Care program is to promote community-wide commitment to the goal of ending homelessness, provide funding for efforts by nonprofit providers, states, and local governments to quickly rehouse homeless individuals, promote access to effective utilization of mainstream programs, and optimize self-sufficiency among individuals and families experiencing homelessness. A little bit on the history and the background of the Continuum of Care program. It started in 1995 when the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development began to require communities to submit a single application for McKinney-Vento homeless assistance grants in order to streamline the funding application process, encourage coordination of housing and service providers on a local level, and promote the development of continuums of care. By requiring communities to submit a single application, HUD hoped to encourage a more structural and strategic approach to both housing and providing services to homeless people. The most recent update to the Continuum of Care program is the Homeless Emergency Assistance and Rapid Transition to Housing, or HARTH Act, adopted in 2009 at the federal government. Among other changes, the HARTH Act consolidated 3 separate programs into a single grant program known as the Continuum of Care program that we run today. Continuum of Care program is designated to assist sheltered, unsheltered homeless people by providing the housing and or services needed to help individuals move into transitional and permanent housing with the goal of long-term stability. Under the HARTH Act, a CFC responsibilities include the following: operating the continuum of care, the governance and management of that CFC, evaluating CFC and emergency solutions grants projects, those projects that are funded, and developing a coordinated entry system, one of the most recent mandates. Designating and operating a homeless management information system, system-wide planning, which includes conducting a point-in-time homeless count, which just occurred this past January, and applying for HUD funding through the annual notice of funding availability. Those are all the responsibilities of a CFC. This program is largely governed by the regulations at the federal government. So HUD's homeless policy and program priorities include creating a systemic response to homelessness, strategically allocating resources, and then ending all homelessness, but in particular, ending chronic homelessness, ending family homelessness, ending youth homelessness, ending veterans homelessness, and then using a housing first approach to do that. So about our local continuum of care in Orange County. Currently, the Commission to End Homelessness acts as the Continuum of Care Board. We are currently in the process of reviewing that structure and trying to formulate actually a separate Continuum of Care Board in addition to having our Commission to End Homelessness. The County Housing and Community Development and Homeless Prevention serves as the lead agency and acts as the collaborative applicant. The membership to the CFC is a broad group of stakeholders. The continuum of care is established by representatives of relevant organizations within a geographic area, and those listed in the smaller font are those that HUD requires to be at the table, but there are former agencies and groups that are part of that membership. So the funding priorities, again, driven by HUD's priorities and the federal government's priorities for this program, continue to be permanent housing. Permanent housing comes in two primary forms for this funding. One is permanent supportive housing, which is non-time limited affordable housing assistance with wraparound supportive services. And then rapid rehousing, which connects families and individuals experiencing homelessness to permanent housing through use of time-limited financial assistance and targeted supportive services. Those are the two forms of funding priorities. So applying for funding. So there's a local process and a federal process. The current process locally for applying for funds, those applying for funds, nonprofit homeless services agency, service agencies through the CFC include currently a two-phased letter of intent process for those projects that are renewing funding, a request for proposal project for projects that are new and requesting new funding, performance evaluations for renewals, and reviews of all project submissions. For more information and some of the history and some of the past documents for funding, you can go to the 211 Orange County website at funding opportunities. And 211 Orange County is under contract and supports the Commission to End Homelessness and the Continuum and a lot of different administrative functions. The federal process then is to submit one application to HUD from the entire continuum of care. We're one continuum of care in the County of Orange, which contains all project applications and required applicant information. There is a process called reallocation that was introduced by the federal government a few years ago. For the last several years, HUD has encouraged this reallocation from underperforming projects and housing types towards new permanent supportive housing. The decision to reallocate is generally based on three criteria. Does the project perform well? Is it cost effective? Does it meet a community need? In 2016, our continuum of care reallocated a project. All other projects were renewals. So here is the funding that was allocated this last year from the federal government to the Orange County Continuum of Care. There are 40 projects and $22 million. You can see they range from the permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing projects to the mandated coordinated entry system, which is eligible for funding under this grant process, the mandated homeless management information system, which also receives grants to fund that, and then continuum of care planning, which is eligible for the administration of this all. Of those 40 projects, 38 are renewal projects. These are projects that continue to provide permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing in our community. They were applications, some of them starting back in the late 1990s when the program started, all the way to more recently. 2 are new projects. And funding for new projects is available only if the projects are reallocated or if HUD allocates additional funding for new permanent supportive housing. Continuum of care funds are awarded to agencies directly, and contracts are with HUD. The funding does not pass through the County of Orange, except for our own project applications, which are shelter plus care applications applied for by the Orange County Housing Authority and the planning grant. So it's hard to tell how many resources come to the city of Anaheim because a lot of these are scattered site, rapid rehousing type permanent supportive housing projects. But we took a look at those projects that are located in the city of Anaheim. Initially, 3 of these projects received capital funds and now receive ongoing operating and supportive service dollars through this federal source of money. Additionally, there's the Shelter Plus Care vouchers that our Orange County Housing Authority applies for. Within that program, 124 homeless individuals in Anaheim are receiving those vouchers. Together, just these components are serving approximately 156 individuals in Anaheim, valued at $3.2 million. But that's a low estimate, as there are many other regional projects in the system. So that is a general overview of a very complex and broad system. If there are any questions, I'd be happy